Good morning, Reflections. Welcome to today's session. As you know, one of the core skill sets of the future is really financial literacy. And I thought that it would be a good opportunity for us to basically hear from an expert in the field. As you know, it's not easy to get such experts to come and talk to us, yeah, because they will be usually they will usually not be so willing to spend their time to come and talk to young people. But I'm glad to actually have Mr. Ming Yang, who's here with us. And I'm so grateful that he has decided to take some of his time, his precious time, to come and speak to all of you about financial literacy. Yeah, let me just give a quick introduction of Mr. Lim Ming Yang. Mr. Lim Ming Yang actually graduated with a bachelor's degree from the University of California, Berkeley. And as many of you would know, the UC Berkeley is a Ivy League university. Yeah? And apart from that, graduating from Ivy League University, if you're interested to find out more about especially UC Berkeley, because being an alumni, he speaks very passionately about UC Berkeley. And also at the same time, apart from that, he is also does his trips for students who are keen to go back to UC or go to UC Berkeley to experience the campus life there. He started off at Citibank, and after 9 months was headhunted to a private bank at Bank Julius Baer. So subsequently, he left the bank to focus on interests in education for pre-college students. So he's the current founder of Scholar Links, which develops summer residential programs at his alma mater, which is UC Berkeley, and organizes online programs for students in Asia Pacific region. So Ming Yang is also very active as serving as a director in several investment holding companies, and he's also the CMO of Golden Horse Fund Management. So as you can see, Ming Yang has, apart from being graduating from a very prominent university, I think he has got the passion for education, and most of all, he's still active in the investment world. So we're very glad this morning that we can have his time. I hope that you can ask as much questions as you can, because you learn more when you ask more, right? If you're just going to sit there and keep quiet and listen to it, and then, you probably will learn something, definitely. But it always helps when you are able to articulate your questions. So I look forward to a very vibrant Q&A session in a while, yeah? So I think let's all put our hands together to welcome Mr. Lim, and then I'll let him take it all from here. Can we just welcome him, everybody? Let's give him a round of applause, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, Ming Yang, over to you. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gary, for the very nice introduction and the kind words. Now, today I want to talk to you all a bit about financial literacy, because I feel it is something very important for everyone to know. I'm only going to scratch the surface of financial literacy because there is so much to be covered, but these are what I feel are the most important skills for you to know. I grew up with banker parents, and what we had for dinner conversation is much of the things I'm going to share with you all today. So having grown up in an environment, I always thought that people knew about these things. And then I learned that at my old university at Berkeley, there were university students who were taking an adulting class, and they were being taught about banking services. They were being taught what credit cards were, what's a savings account, what's a checking account, and so on. Then I talked to some of my friends here in Singapore, and I found out that actually a lot of people, some of my friends included, actually don't know about these things or never had a chance to learn about them. I also recently read a report which said that about 2/3 of US citizens are financially illiterate. Therefore, I decided that it would be useful to have a financial literacy course for students like yourselves, because the earlier you become financially literate and you learn about this stuff and practice it on a daily basis, the better prepared you are going to be in your adult life. So our journey to financial literacy starts at the banks. okay, and the services they provide, because banks are at the core of any financial system. Banks provide a number of services, from the very basic, such as savings accounts, to investment services, to listing services of a new company. Some of these services you may never use, but today, let's go through the ones that the greater majority of people are likely to use. Okay, so the first and most basic service that banks provide is a place to put your savings. Gone are the days of my grandmother, where she kept all her life savings at home. It's much safer to deposit your money in the banks than to keep it at home. If not for any other reason than because most banks are better secured than the average home. But what if the bank goes bankrupt, you ask? Wouldn't that mean that you lose all the money that you've left with them? Well, banks in Indonesia are part of the Indonesia Deposit Insurance Corporation. What this means is that your deposit, your savings that you've kept with the bank, up to 2 billion rupiah are insured. So in the event that the bank, for example, goes bankrupt, you are guaranteed to get back all your savings up to a maximum of 2 billion rupiah. Another advantage of keeping your money in a bank is that it will earn interest. I just did a quick check, and savings in Indonesian banks earn around 3% interest. So why do banks do this? Why are they willing to pay you interest for a service that they provide to you? So what happens is that when you save your money in a bank and they pay you an interest on it, they then lend your money out to other people at a higher interest rate. And so the banks earn the difference. Another service that banks provide for you is cash withdrawal services at their automated teller machines, or ATMs. Once you open a savings account, you'll be given an ATM card. These are cards protected by your individual PIN number, and using your card and your PIN number, you can withdraw physical cash from your bank account at any of your bank's ATM machines. This is very convenient because you then don't need to carry so much physical cash around, and you can use the ATM machines whenever you need the money. Do note that whoever holds your ATM card and who happens to know your PIN number essentially has access to all the money in your bank account. It's not protected like your modern cell phone by your fingerprint, by your photo ID, or any of the other biometric passwords that all of you are used to. All someone needs is your card and your PIN number. So set up a PIN that people are not likely to be able to guess. Don't use something like your birthday or your combination of your favorite numbers that someone else might know, something like that. Another way you can protect the money in your account in case you lose your card is to set a withdrawal limit, a daily withdrawal limit. So you limit how much money can be withdrawn from your bank account using your ATM card each day. So just in case you lose your card and someone knows your password, you're limiting how much money you can lose each day before you cancel your card. Let's talk a bit about credit cards. Credit cards are both a boon and a bane. Now, when I was a kid following my mother around on her shopping trips, I was always amazed at how she could just pick up a whole bunch of items, flash this shiny card to the cashier, and she'd just get whatever she wanted. No need for any money. It was magic. What I didn't realize at that time, because I was just 6, is that she was using a credit card and she had to pay off her bills at the end. So credit cards allow you to make a purchase without having to make the payment right away. At the end of every month, every monthly cycle, the bank will then come and collect money from you for the total amount that you have spent. So you are actually buying things using credit that the bank has extended to you for 1 month, hence the name credit cards. Each person's credit card will always come with a limit on how much you can spend, or in other words, how much credit the bank is willing to extend to you. This limit that the bank sets on the card is usually a multiple of your monthly salary. It could be 2 times, 3 times, 10 times. The banks have a way of assessing and deciding how much limit to give to you. But because the limit is a multiple of your monthly salary, therein lies the danger. a lot of people use credit cards to buy something which they are not able to afford right now. Now, how is this possible? Because every month, when the banks come to collect on your credit card debt, you can either pay off the full amount, or you can just pay off a portion of what you owe the bank. The remaining amount will then incur interest charges and other charges, and that will be added to the amount that the bank is going to come and collect from you next month. There's going to be a lot of administrative fees added to it as well. I remember I once forgot to pay off a credit card bill. It was about $100 overdue. They tell me the interest is 2%, but I ended up paying $75 altogether because they said administrative fees were tacked onto it. So the average interest charge is about $2 per month. And this is very high when you consider that your savings account only earns about 3% interest per year. My advice to you then is to try not to have any credit card debt. But that doesn't mean you should swear off credit cards. Credit cards can be used for the convenience that they give you. Like I said, you don't have to carry around so much physical money, right? They are also safer to carry around than money, because if you lose cash, you drop it on the floor, by the roadside, whatever, it's gone forever. Whereas if you drop your credit card, you can immediately call up your bankers and ask them to cancel the credit card. So that one that you lost will be rendered useless, and they will issue you a new credit card. Okay. In addition, some banks' credit cards, they give you perks like you can earn air miles or cashback or any other thing. So they do have their use, but try not to get into any credit card debt. Now let's talk a bit about loans. So we said earlier that you can save your money in a bank and the bank lends it out to other people. So a loan is when you borrow money from the bank. When you borrow money from the bank each month, you will have to pay interest that the bank charges you on the loan, as well as repay part of the original loan amount, which is what we call the principal. If you are not able to pay back your loans on time, there can be penalty fees, administrative fees charged to you, and possibly a higher interest rate that will be charged going forward. In cases where you have provided collateral to the bank can also seize your collateral and sell it off to try and get back the money that you owe them. So collateral is what you promise to give to the bank in the event that you are unable to pay back your loan. Now, when you take a loan from a bank, nothing wrong with taking a loan from a bank, but be sure to give some allowance, some buffer, because interest rates on loans can increase. Your income can also change. You may have less money in the next months or next years, so you may not have as much to pay back your loan principal and interest. Okay. So I just want to talk a bit about a mortgage, which is a special type of loan. A mortgage is a type of loan to buy a property, but the property that you buy will then be provided as collateral to the bank. The banks will then loan you a fraction of the value of the property. So why is the bank willing to lend you such a large amount of money to buy a new house or a new apartment? Because you have promised to the bank to provide it to them as collateral so they can seize the property and sell it to repay your loan if you are unable to pay them back. Okay, so all right. Now, this is a very important thing and something which all of you can practice every day. Let's talk about budgeting. Budgeting is important because this is the simplest way to stop yourself from falling into debt. It's also a way to help you get your savings, which is how you're going to be able to buy those expensive items that you really want without getting into any credit card debt. So, and also, once you budget and you have some savings, you'll be able to put aside money for investing, which we are going to talk about right at the end of today's presentation. So what do you need to do before you get to spend any money? You first have to make money, right? Or for you all, in your case, you have to get an allowance. So the very first step to budgeting is to take note how much money you have coming in every month. And like I said, for most of you guys, it will be your allowance. So we want to look at constant income, the money that you know will reliably come in every month. For some of your parents, that could be the salary that they get from their job. And as I said, for most of you, it will be your allowance. Don't consider things like the extra money that you get on your birthday from grandma, or money that you find on the ground, or extra money that you get from selling your used video games. So once you have your income, the next step is to see how much are you spending every month, such as how much you need to spend getting to and from school, or to go and visit your friends or your relatives, and how much you spend on food. Other expenses could include how much you spend on your hobbies, how much you spend on presents for yourself or your friends or your family. Basically anything that involves you taking money from your pocket and putting it in another person's pocket. Take the income that you have, the constant income that you have every month, minus away all your expenses, and what you have left is your net income, or that would be called your savings. So after you have listed out all your expenses, the next thing you do is to categorize them. The reason for doing this is to understand where are you spending most of your money and where you can eventually find some savings. So one way to do this is to list all your expenses into fixed expenses and variable expenses. Fixed expenses would be things like transportation to and from school. You got to go to school every day. Food expenses, you got to eat every day, your mobile phone bill, etc., etc. Variable expenses would be things like buying a birthday present for your father, a present for Mother's Day, a new badminton racket when your old one breaks. Basically, we're talking about things that happen sporadically and don't happen on a monthly basis. And we'll see that usually it's under the variable expenses where you'll be easily able to find some things to cut down on. So let's just do a simple example, a quick exercise. I've listed here a few items. They're both fixed and variable expenses. You can think of fixed expenses as your needs and variable expenses as your wants. Let's just take a few moments, think about which ones you would consider as fixed expenses and which ones are variable expenses. Okay, so let's go on to see how I've categorized them. You may do it differently from me. So I put down fixed expenses, things like your internet bill, your phone bill, your tuition fees, basic food, water, and electricity. These don't change much, especially things like your phone bill. You're usually tied to it for a year or two. Transportation, you need to get around. Variable expenses could be things like new shoes, presents, you use too much data on your mobile phone for this month, new devices, eating out with friends. So now that you know how much money you're earning every month, how much money you're spending every month, make a plan to get to the savings level that you aim for. One thing you want to note is that when you want to increase your savings, it's easier and more immediate to cut down on your expenses. It will generally take more time and effort to start earning more constant income. You'll also see that you won't be able to change your fixed expenses much, and it's usually easier to change your variable expenses. But let's take a look at how we can make some savings by cutting down on our expenses. So let's first take a look at variable expenses. If you're used to buying a new device every few months or every year, this is a spending that you can easily adjust. Unless you are writing reviews for all these new devices as your job, you don't need to buy a new cell phone every few months. If you are used to eating out with your friends, you don't have to stop this completely, but you can easily choose to eat at somewhere more affordable, especially since I assume it's more about the company than the kind of food you eat. Now let's look at fixed expenses and see if it's easier or more difficult to make adjustments here. If you are used to taking a taxi everywhere you go, you can make the switch to taking buses or trains, but be mindful that although this would be cheaper, it will mean that you are spending more time on the road, more time traveling, and this is an adjustment that you would have to make to your daily schedule. If you need to save how much you spend on your mobile plan, you can downgrade to a cheaper plan, but this would also reduce how many minutes of talk time you have, how much data you can use. So adjustments to your lifestyle need to be made there as well. So from this example, I hope you can see that making changes to your fixed expenses usually entail making changes to your lifestyle, as well as changes that might inconvenience you as well. Okay, so we have covered banking services, we have covered budgeting, savings, and expenses. The next thing I want to talk to is compounding. Compounding is something that you will hear a lot of, especially when it comes to savings, investments, and even debt. Compounding is defined as the process whereby interest is credited to an existing principal amount, as well as to interest that has already been earned. Compounding thus can be thought of as earning interest on your interest, and this magnifies your returns over time. So next, let's look at an example of how, let's look at a case where we have a person who is just saving money every year with no interest, and a person who saves some money right at the start, but nothing else, but is earning, I'm just going to pluck out a number here, 10% of interest every year. And you'll see that the interest earning account can transform that small initial bit of savings into quite a sizable number at the end. So even Einstein, well, according to various accounts, Einstein even once said that compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. So let's take a look at this case. The blue line represents someone who is saving $100 every year into their bank account, but this bank account doesn't earn any interest. So at the end of a 50-year period, this person will have $5,000. Now, if you put $100, the same amount that the person saves every year, into an interest earning account that earns 10% interest every year, and you do nothing else, at about the 40-year mark, this interest earning account is going to have the same amount of money as the non-interest earning account. So you're already ahead by 10 years here. And by the 50-year mark, the interest earning account will actually have double the amount of the non-interest earning account. So how does compounding grow your money so much faster than just putting money in every month? Let's take a look at this illustration which I came up with. So in year one, you put in $100, you earn an interest of 10%, so you have earned $10 of interest. So you have a total of $110 at the end of year one. In year two, your initial $100 is going to earn another $10 of interest. But the $10 of interest from last year now earns you $1 of interest. So by the end of year two, you will have a total of $121. In year three, your initial $100 will earn its third $10 of interest. Your first $10 of interest will earn its second $1 worth of interest. Your second $10 will earn its first $1 of interest. And your $1 of interest from the previous year will now earn its first 10 cents of interest. And so on and so forth. So you have a total of $133.10 by the end of the third year. Because of compounding, you can see how this picture is going to get very out of hand very quickly, which also shows you how a little interest applied every year can make a small investment grow rather large. Now let's look at the case where you put all your savings of $100 every year into an interest earning account instead. We take the same number, 10% interest earned every year. At the end of 50 years, you're going to have 10 times more than what you would have if you had just saved $100 in the first year. And you're going to have 20 times what you would have if you had just saved money into a non-interest earning account. All right, so that's the effect of compounding and how it can grow your savings very, very quickly. But I want you to remember, compounding is a sword that cuts both ways. It makes your debt larger over time. It's how inflation makes things way more expensive than before. And we're going to come back to this again when we talk about inflation, but when the same things get more expensive, your money becomes worth less. So let's talk a bit about inflation. Inflation is a hot topic this year, and people are paying more attention to it because of the record numbers popping up all over the world. Many countries are reporting decade-high inflation. But actually, inflation happens all the time. It's how the price of things go up. Inflation hits everyone, but sometimes it feels like it hits each person differently. So just to lighten the mood, I saw something funny on the internet the other day that talks about how different people feel about inflation, and I thought I want to share that with all of you. So for the big corporations, the price of their raw materials go up, but sometimes it feels like, well, the price of their raw materials go up, but they increase the price of their final product to you. So in the end, it makes no difference to them whether there's inflation or not. That's how it feels sometimes. For the new generation, for you guys who are looking at things getting more and more expensive, and you haven't even started earning your first paycheck yet, I wonder if this is how it feels for you all now. For those who are surviving on minimum wage, they're just making ends meet, and suddenly you tell them your basic necessities are going to be 20% more expensive this year. I suspect that this is how they must feel. For those in the middle class who have just climbed up from making ends meet and are now being able to afford a better lifestyle, and you tell them that inflation is coming for them and they're going to go back to just making ends meet again, I'm sure there's a lot of frustration among them, and they probably feel like this guy here. For those who already earn their money, they've bought their house, their cars, they have something set up for their children, maybe inflation doesn't hit them quite as hard as the rest of us. And lastly, we're talking about the ultra rich, those who have more money than they know what to do with for 3 lifetimes. I wonder, I'm not there, but I wonder if this is how they feel about inflation. But let's get back to something more serious. So I just pulled out some headlines from various websites and newspapers. So as you can see, all around the world, people are being hit quite hard by inflation this year. If I'm not wrong, I read a report that said the inflation rate in Indonesia is just under 6%. So I want you to remember that number, 6%, because we'll come back to it again later. So when the same thing, the same house, the same bowl of noodles, the same plate of rice keeps getting more expensive, that means that the money that you have saved in your bank to spend on these things will be worth less and less over time. This is true even if you keep saving more into your account, because yes, you will have more in number terms, but the money that you have already saved will become worth less and less. And inflation is also eating away your savings because people's salaries don't rise at quite the same pace as inflation. Let's look at an example of the prices of homes in the United States versus people's incomes over time. Now, you might not be thinking about this right now because you're staying with family, but a home is something that I hope is in everyone's future. And it is a big ticket item. It's possibly going to be the most expensive thing most of us will ever buy. So it's going to have a great effect on your income and expenses. So let's just look at this quickly. I hope you all can see the graph. In the last 10 years in America, home prices rose 30%, but income rose only 11%, which means that it's getting more and more out of reach for the everyday man. And if you look back 50 years instead of just 10 years, you'll see that home prices were actually up over 100%, but people's income was only up 15%. So this is just one example of one item that people buy where inflation makes the same thing much more expensive, and people's incomes are not rising at the same pace to keep up with inflation. The end result being that although you see a bigger number in your bank account, you actually end up being poorer. So I want to share this, I want to illustrate this with a personal example. I hope this illustrates better to you how inflation devastates some people. 40 years ago, my parents bought their first home, a $70,000 apartment here in Singapore. So that's 70,000 Singapore dollars. That was almost all the money they had at the time. And they each had a monthly salary of about $1,000. They both had master's degrees, and so their salaries were on the high end of the spectrum for the day. Today, that same apartment, which we still own, is being sold for about $1,500,000. And if you look at the average workforce in Singapore today, a high starting salary would be about $8,000. So starting salaries have gone up about 8 times, but the price of the house has gone up 21 times. During my parents' time, to buy that apartment would cost them 70 months of their starting income. Now, it will cost the new generation 190 months of their starting income. The conclusion I want you to draw from all this is that inflation will eat at your savings and things get expensive faster than your boss is giving you a raise. So how are we supposed to bridge this gap between inflation and what we have? One way, not the only way, but one way is through investments. So just want to reiterate, savings is losing. You will be worse off in the future than you are right now. And now remember, I told you about inflation rate being 6% in Indonesia, but if you compare that to the savings rate, the interest that banks are willing to pay you on your savings is only 3%. So you're losing 3%, about 3% every year. So we want to look at investment next, something that an alternative that gives you a greater return, a greater interest than just putting your money in the savings account. So let's talk about investment. Investments is an activity you do that aims to give you a profit or an income over a period of time. Now, why should you invest? Some say, well, how about if I just keep working and saving and working more and hope to get a promotion? One purpose of investing is to try and beat inflation, is to try and get the returns from your money from 3% to 6%, which is the current rate of inflation, and hopefully even more than 6%. However, no investment is a sure thing. People feel differently about companies, and companies go bankrupt all the time. Even large companies are not spared. I'm from a different generation than you guys. During my time, Nokia was the largest mobile phone manufacturer in the world and quite easily the most popular model of mobile phone. I'm not sure if any of you have even heard of this brand anymore nowadays. Okay. And the other important thing is to only invest the money that you don't need right away. And you should only invest the money that you can afford to lose, because like I said, some investments turn sour very quickly. Now, when you invest, you're hoping to buy something at a lower price and hopefully sell it at a higher price, or while the time that you're investing to earn some income over the time of your investment. So what can you invest in? You should invest in something you are familiar with. Now, when I was younger and I was actively playing trading card games, that's what I used to buy. I would see which are the popular cards, I would buy them, hold on to them, hope that the price goes up, and then I would sell them for a profit. Now I buy collectors table tennis bats. I look at which are the popular ones. I buy them and hope that in a few years' time, when supply dries up, they will become more expensive and I can sell them for a profit. But if you want to look to invest in something which are well regulated by authorities, one thing that you can look at is the stock market, which is where I personally invest most of my money. So you can invest in things like stocks and bonds. You can invest in currencies, in commodities. Why I chose the stock market is because it's well regulated, as I mentioned, and information is plentiful. You don't have to worry about buying a counterfeit product. There are lots of counterfeit table tennis bats. There are lots of counterfeit trading cards, but I've yet to see anyone trying to trade a counterfeit stock in a company. So you don't have to worry about counterfeits. You don't have to worry about the party not delivering on their end of the transaction. So I don't want to talk too much about investments because this is something that's still quite a few years away for most of you. But I just wanted to share with you my preferred method of trying to beat inflation. But I want to leave you all with something interesting. It's called the rule of 72. You can ask your math teacher about how this is calculated. But it's basically a simple way to calculate how long it takes for your investment to double. So if you have an investment and it's earning you 10% interest, like in the example we used earlier, what you do is you take 72 and you divide it by that number, divide by 10. So 72 divided by 10 gives you 7.2, and that's the number of years that it will take for you to double your investment. So you can go home and share this fun fact with your parents later tonight. So I'm coming to the end of my talk because I'll leave some time for Q&A. So if you all are just waking up, welcome back to the presentation. And if you are just tuning in, if nothing else, I hope that you will take away these main points from today's presentation. Do your budgeting. This is something you can do every day, every week, every month. Check how much money is coming in against how much you are spending. Control your expenses so that you will have savings, either for a rainy day or to invest in the future. Don't take on credit card debt to buy something. The interest rate is just too high. It's better to delay your gratification and save up to buy that item that you really want. Compounding is a powerful force to help in your savings and investments, but it can also hurt you if you get into debt. Don't just save, or inflation will take away some of the value of your hard-earned money. And lastly, I believe that investing is something everyone should do, and the earlier you do it, the better. But no investment is ever guaranteed. So please only invest what you can afford to lose. That means no investing next year's tuition fees or next month's rent. Instead, do your budgeting, get some savings for a rainy day, get more savings, and then invest that. So I've come to the end of my presentation for today. I would now like to have a Q&A with you guys. If you have any questions, please just tell your teachers. If you have any questions that you want to write to me directly about, if you're interested in financial literacy or anything about the financial world, or if you want to talk about Berkeley, something which Mr. Gary said that I'm always passionate and I am very passionate about, you can write to me directly. That's my email right there at the bottom of the screen. And with that, thank you, Mr. Gary. I'd like to open up the floor now to any questions.